Welcome to the Crimeycade podcast. I am the mad conservative crime fighter, and I got audio, and that's good because there's always the chance of something going wrong when starting a podcast. Episode 29. Yes, I've gone a little more than 6 months, and it's been a bit of a ride, and there's a lot of people left to interview. It's just a matter of identifying who to come in next, and that's always going to be a challenge. And yes, there was a slight echo because I had this thing going. I turned it down, so now we should not hear anything that's repeating itself. If you let's show this before we get going here. Let's go through the Galvin Ghost House highs so far this week. Andrew Owasco today took the high on Skycade with 193,000, over 193,000. He also took Shadowland back from KG, just a mere $100 higher than the previous house high. He also took back Ribbit pretty quickly, I might add, defeating Zach Davison score that he set last week at 1,700 points, but Andrew's closing in almost to 2,000. But a score did get taken from Andrew. Brian Wiesenberg took Great 1,000-Mile Rally, beat the score, lowered that time by a few more hundredths of a second. Then Claudio Capello setting the bar on the Skins game. Now you have to play an entire 18-hole course. I don't know if mulligans are allowed yet. It is you hit because the feature of that game is if you botch a shot, you can hit 911 and then re-hit the ball. I don't know if Galvin Ghost is allowing that or not. Now, they certainly allowed it for T20, but I don't know if they're allowing this for Skins game or not. I'll have to find out sometime. And of course, the chase for tokens. Andrew put in the score for Space Dungeon, so he's raised his token count a lot higher. James has still got a 400 token lead still. Of course, I got my tokens. I'm over 7,000. Matt Walters crossed the 6,000 mark finally. Pete Gore's crossed the 5,000 mark finally. But it's still early in the season. Of course, the power rankings. How much stock do people put in here? Well, I don't know. It depends on, it's to each his own on that one. I still think. Oh, King Cam Blackman says he's going to play Skycade tomorrow. Well, good luck with that because it's like, yeah, you got to almost get 200,000 on that one. But no change in power rankings. Andrew's been trying to get to the 200 score mark for quite some time. And somebody comes in and snipes a score from him and another score from him, and he's been kind of stuck at the 190 mark for quite some time. He's tried to get to 200. Now he's made a little bit of progress. So we'll see how that goes. Let's see. And the game of the month in Arcade Wars. And the Garcade has put in its first score, Jim Patzer, with that impressive 107,000. Of course, you have to put in 3 scores, but he's the first one. We only got about 10 days left before the end of the month. One Up Arcade right now in the lead. And one more score needs to be put in for Galvin Ghost. But while Arcus does speedruns of all the NES Ninja Gaiden games, he doesn't play the arcade version of Ninja Gaiden. And I'd like to see how fast he can 1cc the arcade version. It's not easy because this game is really hard. And if you 1cc the game, you're going to be close to about 200,000. So that's about the high mark for this arcade title. Not an easy one. All right. Well, tonight I have a couple of guests. We had one of these guys in last week to talk about crimes in gaming, and there's been some new crimes in gaming that I may want to touch on sometime tonight because there's been a few things that have gone down. But somebody that George works for is their technician. It's one of the biggest arcades in Wisconsin. So introducing at this time, the owner of the Garcade and the Mecca, his technician, Gar Nelson and George Spanos. Welcome in. How are you doing tonight?
Doing awesome.
So the Garcade, when they hear the name Garcade, they think an arcade in the garage, kind of like what I have, but it's not what it is.
No,
it's named after you, or you named it after, kind of like how I named my garage arcade, the Crimeycade. You named it after your first name.
Yep, absolutely. It started with my my basement arcade at home. We called that the Garcade, and over the course of time, once I decided to go commercial, my business partner and my wife, they didn't want to change it. They wanted to keep it as the Garcade still and keep that memory alive of where we started in the basement. And so here we are.
Well, we'll get to the Garcade, but I want to find out more about your history in the gaming scene. Now, I'm a child of the 80s. I assume you are also a child of the 80s, correct?
Yes. Yep. I spent plenty of time in arcades during my youth and during the times that I was growing up. We had an Aladdin's Castle over on the south side and a couple of other Showbiz, Chuck E. Cheese. And I remember when they actually had arcade games in them, not just all the ticket and redemption stuff that they have now. And yeah, it started there. And over the course of time, gaming kind of came and went in my life in various flavors. I've done a lot of like RPG gaming, Dungeons and Dragons, and Warhammer 40K, Warhammer Fantasy, Magic the Gathering, like totally nerding out in every way. Yeah. And so eventually came around full circle back to arcade games and kind of wanted to have some of that nostalgia from my youth and a couple of the games that I remember growing up, and really that's what drove me.
So let's go back to the very beginning. What was the first video game you ever played, and was that the hook?
Well, I'm old enough that before I was really exposed to arcade games per se, I grew up in areas where we played a lot of pinball. I grew up playing EM pinball, and I'd go to the bar with my parents and they would sit and have a couple of drinks and they would toss me a couple of quarters and I'd go and play some old pinball. And so that was like my real first experience.
So pinball before video games.
Yes. Yeah. So like, I was born in 74. I turned 50 this year. So I remember the whole the consoles coming up at the same time, kind of as the arcades and things like that, and the kind of the wars between the two different play types. And I was able to participate in both. And I had an Atari 2600 from the original runs, and I played Pong, where you would actually sit next to each other and share a controller. And so I remember a lot of that kind of stuff growing up. And my family wasn't, very well off. And so going to the arcade was something we did very, very rarely. We would have more of the console style gaming. But I remember playing, Battlezone back in the day, where like my parents would actually have to lift me up to be able to look through the periscope. And, at that point, I was probably 8, 9 years old. And so that way, that one, between that one and Tempest was another big one for me.
Okay, so first one was what?
Battlezone.
Battlezone was the first arcade game you played?
First arcade game, yeah.
Wow. That's not an easy one to start out with.
No, but it was cool controls. And I mean, as a kid, that first person's perspective and the early like 3D rendering using the vector graphics was very cool. And so it definitely drew me in. I remember, a lot of the arcades really early in the day. So like I remember going to the arcade and seeing people playing Dragon's Lair for the first time and being like, dude, this is 50 cents. Are you kidding me? And like you walk up and 10 seconds later you're walking away because you have no idea what you're doing because the game's brand new. Nobody's figured it out yet. And it was an interesting time.
Yeah, quick time events before it was even known as quick time.
Right. I mean, I remember playing a lot of the early stuff, but there were a few games that were very high on my list that I really loved playing as a kid. And like I said, Tempest definitely falls into that category.
All right. You started with play pinball. Do you remember the pinball you played first?
No, I mean, back then I was so young that like I didn't pay attention to titles or gameplay or, cradling balls or anything cool like that. Like it was literally just hitting flippers and watching the ball like fly around and just being totally enthralled with that and trying to keep it alive and hearing all of the bells going off and the reels ticking. And it was a very cool thing. And part of that I still am very into, in part because like when you play pinball, you get more tactile sensation versus with an arcade game, it seems to be a lot less tactile. And so like that's part of what drew me into pinball to begin with. Just that physical feel and those solenoids popping, and it was very cool when you're that young to have something that was that interactive. Like you didn't think you could have toys and games that would react in that kind of a way.
Now, back in your time, or back in the 80s, what were some of your gaming feats back then?
None.
When you were a teen or young,
none.
20-something? None?
It's funny because here I am. I'm older and I own an arcade, and like I am not a gamer when it comes to like arcade games and stuff. Like I don't have the attention span for it. In order to get good at games, it's a lot of repetitive gameplay. And now I know I have ADHD. Back in the 1980s, I had no idea what it was. Or like, dude, just a spaz. And so like, it was a little different time. And I didn't have the attention span to be able to play a game through to completion or to have a desire to try and put up a high score or anything like that. Like, it literally comes down to just the love of the game, like the graphics and the art and, all of the different unique types of gameplay that they offer. It was just, it was like going to a buffet and being able to just take a little bit of this and a little bit of this and a little bit of this and be totally happy.
So let me ask you this. You were like, I'm going to bring George back in since he's here. You did a lot, I guess you mentioned attention deficit. Did you like start games like left and right and just play like for a minute or so and then walk away and then somebody has to walk up and finish your game?
I wound up being more of a console gamer, ultimately.
Okay.
Like, when I really played, I was like heavily addicted to my Atari 2600 at home. Like that, I played everything, and some of the games drove you crazy, and some of the games you just had just a ton of fun playing over and over and over again. So I would do a lot of that. Like I said, my family didn't have a lot of money growing up, so going to the arcade was definitely a luxury for us.
So if you put the quarter in, you had to finish the game because you just realized, I'm wasting my money, even though I don't want to. I need to. I don't want. Yeah, I'm done with this game, but I want to walk away. But I threw my money in there, so I gotta finish.
So I might as well play it out. And it's like, how many quarters am I really going to invest if I'm really not all that great at this? Like, I was very realistic as a kid. Like, yep, I suck, but it was fun. Like,
of course, so for now.
For now, it's more of a nostalgia thing. Like, I look back to the fact that this stuff was very inaccessible to me as a kid. And now that I'm an adult, like, I'll make it accessible. Like, I'll go and just buy the game myself. And so that's where a lot of this really came from, was that nostalgia and just the reminiscing of being a kid and like how unobtainable a lot of this stuff was back then.
I grew up in Central Illinois, pretty much, most of my life. I only know of the arcades back in my youth. In Jacksonville and Springfield, my neighbor actually owned an arcade called the Magic Castle. One of his daughters lives in the neighborhood, and I kind of feel like I need to reach out to her rather soon to find out if her dad's still around and maybe get him on the podcast, because he had an arcade, and I grew up around that quite a bit. But what was some of the arcades that you frequented back in the day?
It was a lot of the commercial stuff. We had like Go Bananas. We had Aladdin's Castle here. We had Shakey's Pizza. We had the Showbiz and Chuck E. Cheese, and so it was a lot of that kind of stuff. We did have out here in Menominee Falls, which is where we're located now. There used to be an arcade here called Pinball Jacks. And so that was a cool arcade that I did get to go to once or twice when I was growing up. My aunt lived out in this area. I would go and visit frequently and hang out with my cousins. And so for us, we would get to go ahead and, go to the arcade once in a while. There were a lot of family-owned arcades, especially back in the early and mid-'80s. And so you'd be able to go and find these little holes in the wall here and there. I do remember, near my house, there was a early convenience store, and they had 3 arcade games in there. So they had I want to say they had a Space Invaders, an Asteroids, and I think a Berserk. So those were fun to go periodically go and play. You find it, $1 laying around the house or some change in the cushions, and be able to run up the corner 2 blocks away and be able to plunk it in the machine and play for a little bit and have fun.
Well, nowadays, you know what took its place? Gambling machines.
Yeah. And they still decide to call them video games.
Yeah, and I'm offended by that because it's like...
Agreed.
The city in which I live, there's 150 gambling parlors. It's ridiculous. We're like little Vegas and we're the state capital.
And it's funny because in a lot of their rankings and stuff in Google and things like that, they mark themselves as arcades. And so it waters down.
Oh my gosh.
The people that are looking for specific arcades will wind up finding those places as well.
I kind of recall, speaking of crimes and gaming, I forgot about this one, and you kind of, Gar, you kind of jarred my memory on that one. There was an arcade, I believe, down in Florida that got busted because they were calling itself an arcade, but they were basically running an illegal casino.
Arcade Monsters?
No.
No.
Somewhere else.
No.
That's the one with the escorts.
Arcade Monsters with the Arcade Monsters is a barcade down in the Florida area, yeah, but this was something else entirely. It's like I'd have to go digging around to pull that article up, but I just thought of it.
There was a lot of weird stuff happening in the arcades back in the 80s.
There was another scandal, speaking of another crime in gaming and gambling. Somewhere in the southern United States, or maybe the Mid-South, there was I think it was a game called Ocean King. Well, people were gambling on that one too, and the officials or law enforcement raided those places too. It was like, oh, this is an arcade game, but with joysticks and buttons. But they said this people were betting and wagering on it. It's like, then I watched the gameplay. It's like, so it looks like a redemption game. Although you have to score points, although the gameplay may not be consistent, it may kind of adjust, basically trying to get money out of somebody. And
arcade gaming has a very long history of being kind of tied in with gambling here and there. Look at the history of pinball. The whole invention of the flippers and the fact that it was, banned in multiple states during the 1930s, 1940s, 1950s.
Yeah.
All the way up through the 70s with Roger Sharp. And so, it's very interesting that, again, now we come out with the video gaming side of it where, we have a screen and we have buttons and we have joysticks and, you had all these underground casinos that were, pretending to be arcades. And now you go to the casino and they're trying to make their gambling games more like arcade games. They want to bring in a lot more of those sorts of elements into it to try to draw people in and get them to sit there longer and want to see more of the action and more of the animations. And it's a slippery slope, but they've been tied for so long that it's kind of, they go hand in hand, whether you like it or not. How many arcades have you been to where there's signs up that says no gambling?
George, you've been wanting to chime. Do you want to chime in on anything?
No, he's the guest.
Okay. Well, you're here for color.
I'm Jesse Ventura.
Oh, you're Jesse. Yes, exactly.
He's just a moving banner.
Well, yes, that'd be fair.
Yay, Wisconsin.
I gotta. Oh, here we go. Let's have a reaction to this one. Haas Wilder says, Garcade has committed a crime by keeping the sound down on the Rush pinball machine for months now. Apparently, he wants to hear the music.
So I completely agree with him. The guy that you want to complain to is right
there?
Right, yeah, right there.
Come at me, bro.
George has this affinity for turning all of the game's volumes down as far as he can, unless they're fighting games. Those are all set to maximum volume. That's the only way George can work, apparently. It's definitely a thorn in our side. But I will get that taken care of, and we will get that turned back up again. So George can listen to non-stop Rush.
Rush has some good music. So does Foo Fighters. Godzilla even has some decent tracks. Iron Maiden, Black. Yep.
See, I did that. I don't know why. You know what? A dude probably 3 weeks ago, he said something about Rush being too quiet. I turned it up.
And definitely, if you're here, mention it at our front desk. If you have any problems with volume on the games, most of the games, especially the pinball machines, will be more than happy to turn up for you because it's literally just opening the door, hitting the button once or twice, and closing it back up. We can be in and out of there in 2 minutes, and everybody has keys. So definitely let them know at the front desk. We can definitely try to accommodate you immediately.
Wasn't me, but people know what's up.
He turns all the most annoying games in the establishment up because he can't hear.
Correct.
Well, you got all these newer pinballs that have rock and roll music or classic rock, and it's real popular. Yeah, Guns N' Roses has a machine. Elton John has a machine now. Another one. What else? There's some.
There's tons. There's Aerosmith. There's, like you said, Iron Maiden.
Queen.
Yeah, the Queen. That was done. Those are harder to find. Those are more boutique pinball. But like even from a mainstream Jersey Jack, Stern, like they've got quite a few music to AC/DC.
Yeah.
Metallica.
Yeah. Oh, Led Zeppelin. That's another one.
Yeah.
Not Led Zeppelin. I know Galvin Ghost Pinball has one.
I wanted to get one just so I could turn the music up, but disable the play field because like that's the only way to do it true justice. Led Zeppelin is like literally one of the most atrocious Stern pinballs I've ever played.
Really?
And I'm not the only person. Like, look at the sales stats behind it. Like, it did not sell well. They were having a hard time giving them away. It was not a well-designed pin, especially given the fantastic intellectual property they had to work with.
Well, no wonder Galvin Ghost Pinball got one because it was cheap.
It was dirt cheap. They were offering them for sub $5,000 new in box. Like,
well, maybe.
Guys were taking.
I don't have a pinball in my Crimeycade yet. I'd like to have one, but I don't want to spend 5 digits for one.
Well, like everything's $7,000 base now. Stern leaves up to $7,400 on a Pro, $92 to $95 on a Premium.
Trying to get a used one is difficult now. But then again, was it a decade ago? Arcade games were a lot easier to get your hands on. Now, not so much.
Everybody's jumped into that nostalgia factor. For the first time, in the last 100 years or so, adults are now buying more toys than children. They're buying stuff for themselves. And so you're seeing a definite shift in where disposable income for adults is going. And a lot of it's going into those collectibles and, all those things that they always wanted as a kid that they could never afford. And
they grew up with it. Now they're able to afford it. But now they've also declared them grown-up toys.
Yeah, I mean, you remember back in the day when it was the 1980s, early 1990s, like it was super cool when somebody had a single pinball machine in their basement or a single arcade game in their house. And now you got, I could throw rocks and hit guys that have 20 of them in their basement. Like,
that's the thing. I had to get them out of my basement because it's like if I want any more or if I want to trade them out, it's like I don't have the muscle to go lugging them up and down stairs.
Now you know why I went commercial. It's a lot easier when it's all ground
level. Get them on the ground floor. Yes.
My business buys my toys for me. Like, it's awesome.
Yes. Doggone, getting them out of your basement's doggone dangerous. Especially because you cannot lose your footing even for a moment.
When we opened, I had to pull 21 games out of my basement, and I hired movers. It's the best money I ever spent.
Yeah.
You know, and I was pulling. I mean, we were pulling games out like Total Carnage. You know, Mortal Kombat. Like we were pulling big games out of my basement.
Well, I had to partially disassemble the game and basically take the monitor out of the cabinet if I could remember how to get it out, because that's a lot of weight by itself.
Yeah, we around here we call that real man stuff. We just strap it up and pull it out and worry about it later.
But
it's a little more wear and tear on your body. It's a lot less goofing around.
If I had a mover, if I wanted to spend the money on a mover just to move 5-6 machines out, but no, my dad helped me with some of them, and then a coworker helped me with the rest of them. But a little touch and go, trying to get them up the stairs, and I chose to stay on the bottom side to keep control of it. Oh, scary.
If it was a different time, I'd tell you to offer one of the local neighborhood teenagers like $20 to help you move it out of there. But nowadays,
no, the person I would hire pro wrestlers.
Right, there you go, pro wrestlers.
Because I hung out with them all the time. That's being phased out now, but yes, I would have hired them big, strong professional wrestlers to help me get them out. Whew. Anyway, gosh. Oh, we swerved in. I started going into arcades of the past that you've been to. What are some of the games that you've seen back in the day, but they've been forgotten and you don't have them in on the arcade floor? That's a tricky question.
That is a tricky question. It would be hard for me to come up with anything all that unusual. Most of everything that I saw growing up was a lot of the mainstream stuff, just because a lot of the arcades in our area, they would only bring in like the real heavy earner games.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, there are definite games that I have fondness for that were a little harder to find, but a lot of them are still relatively prevalent today.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like 720 and Paperboy, and the stuff with the very individual, unique controls. Those sorts of things you remember. You could have told me I played Trog back in the day, and I wouldn't necessarily remember. There was nothing about a lot of the games that made them really stand out from one another, where it was very unique, crazy, great gameplay. So yeah, I don't think I can come up with anything really all that unusual. But I definitely, I have some favorites from back in the day. Spy Hunter's one of those, and loved playing that growing up. Just the driving and the feel for it. Stun Runner, which is a very cool landmark game.
I can name a couple off the top of my head that was at my neighbor's arcade, but I haven't seen since, or at least not in anybody's arcade, not even the Galloping Ghost. Killer Comet, which is a game plan game. My neighbor had it on the arcade floor for a time. Somebody at Midwest Gaming Classic brought a cabinet. However, it was not running on original hardware. It was running the game on MAME. So
for a little while, we had, what was the name of the game? Tattoo Assassins. We had some boards here for that. One of the former employees from Data East, they wound up helping out here for a little while. And they had kind of left that behind and stored it here for a little while. So we had that when nobody else had that. But we never brought it out on the floor or anything. I didn't want anything to happen to it.
Well, Doc Mac has it on his floor.
He does. He does. But this one actually had prototype ROMs. So, because he was one of the engineers working on the gameplay, and so he had ROMs that weren't actually released. And,
well, technically,
I mean, I guess technically none of them were really released. Yeah,
it is the whole thing is a prototype, but you know.
He had a different iteration than what's currently available in MAME.
Oh, okay. Well, yeah. Well, I should ask. Have you hooked it up and tried to determine differences?
I didn't know. I'm not. I pay
I
guys to
have
take care of
played
that.
it. It was a Bloody Wars tournament game. I did all right, but doesn't mean I didn't win the title. Robert Bale won, which I got to get to him a little bit later because I've been asked. I could have sworn the cats were crying behind me. If you see back there, there's two troublesome felines in the background. The orange one is likely to crash the stream at some point, but so he stayed asleep, which is remarkable. All right, well, so I guess you said you're building the arcade in your basement. What was the first arcade game that you actually purchased and owned?
It would be an Asteroids Deluxe.
And how did you acquire it?
Gentleman that was a friend of my wife's family had 2 games in his basement, and he would not get rid of the Donkey Kong. But
Who would?
He was definitely okay with getting rid of the Asteroids Deluxe. It was not working, and it took me several years to fix it. I just didn't have the technical knowledge, the technical know-how at that point to be able to really delve in. But over the course of time, I got it up and running, and it lived in my basement for years and years and years. And before we opened, I had a friend over, and he fell in love with the machine, and he offered me a absolutely ridiculous amount of money for it. And I was like, well, I'll buy a new one. So I sold it.
Wow. I'll say the first one I acquired was Vanguard, and that was at auction. It was donated. It was donated for a charity auction. My dad was a member of Ambucks, so it was the Ambuck auction. Had the parents bid on it, and they got it for like $80, $90.
Nice.
Of course, this was back in the 90s. Yeah, you try to get
back
that
when they were
now.
like trying to give them away.
Yeah, I wish. That was the only year that an arcade game showed up at the Ambuck auction that I've sold individual games and stuff for the Atari. That was it. There's thoughts about, or somebody was thinking about donating another one another year, but it never materialized. I wish it did. I could have had another one in my basement. So I had Vanguard. And when my parents remarried, my stepmother, who was married to somebody who passed away, had a Central Park pinball machine. So we had that in my parents' house for a number of years before they moved to Mount Vernon. They had to sell it off to somebody. They sold it to a collector because they didn't have room for it in the new place. Would I have liked to have it? Yeah, but yeah.
I ran out of space about 40 machines ago.
In the basement? So what did you end up with?
Almost at the point now where we have to start stacking them on their sides.
I'm
kidding. I'm joking.
Are we at the we're kind of still in the basement there. Before the real arcade opened. But what other games did you you built the arcade in your basement.
Mm-hmm.
So you started with Asteroids Deluxe. Where did it go from there?
I had bought a used $6 million man pinball machine. That was one that I had for a long time. I found really early on, I wound up talking to somebody that I had just started a job, and they had a couple of games in their basement that they had wanted out. And I got a really good deal, and I picked up a Super Pac-Man. What did I get along with that? A Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, Turtles in Time, um, and two more games. Can't think of offhand. But they wound up, that was when it went from I've got 2 games in my basement to I've got 6 games in my basement to I've got 12 games in my basement. I started going. I had a friend that I'm still friends with. He lived not far from my house, maybe 2-3 miles away, and we were both collectors and kind of going through a lot of the same stuff. And we wound up hanging out together, and we would go on these runs. And this was the time when you could actually still find warehouse raids periodically, and so we would go on raids with each other and grab a U-Haul and throw 10 games in the back and go home and be like, all right, you take these 3, I'll take these 6. Then eventually I outgrew my basement, and my wife had always let me use my 2.5 car garage as kind of like my guy space. So games started overflowing then into the garage, and eventually I had like 25 more games out in my garage. Um, I had 22 in my house. So I had a good 45 games like on premise in my house before we opened the arcade. And at one point, my business partner, who has been my best friend for years and years and years, I started overflowing with games, and my overflow went to his house, and then he started buying games. So when we opened, he had 10, 15 at his house, and it was crazy, like trying to move all of those to one facility, going from being a home collector to an operator, was very different. But trying to like just get that started and go through those first 50 some games, and then taking, we went out, we bought 10 games off of this other guy in Green Bay. And so the collection here grew very, very fast. Once we opened, we had lots of space to be able to fill. And it took us, I want to say, probably took us about 2 years to go from 50 arcade games and 4 pinball machines to 150 arcade games and 10, 15 pinball machines.
So what year was this? When you bought the Asteroids Deluxe, what year was that?
So I bought my first arcade game in about 2007. I, quote unquote, established my home arcade in 2012. And then I became an arcade owner in 2017.
Okay, so you go from the games in the basement. It started to get overwhelming. You had the itch to maybe do well. When did it come to the point where you decided, maybe I should put all these games in a central location, make it open to the public? When did you get that itch?
I want to say I got that itch 2014, I would guess, because it was a couple of years before we actually opened the arcade. It was something my buddy Tim and I had kind of thrown out back and forth, like, well, we could probably do this, and went down and checked out Galloping Ghost and Underground Retrocade. Scott's a very, very good friend of mine, and kind of saw what they were doing and the feasibility behind it. And I was like, man, we could totally do this. And so it was something where we talked about it, and we were on that cusp, but we could not find the right guy or the right place. And so like once we found the right location, then everything fell into place. It took us, like I said, almost 3 years to find the location that we were in. Most everything was too small or way too big. It wasn't in the right spot. You weren't going to get a lot of, walk-through business or things like that. And so we definitely wanted to find a place that hit certain criteria for us. And it took quite a while to do that. But that allowed us to sit down and work out a business plan and come up with investment money and, really to be able to kind of get everything moving in the right direction without having to do it under the gun. And so it worked out well for us, like being able to take that extra time. Oh, absolutely. Like, I cannot say enough about Scott Lambert. He is like the coolest guy. He is a very, very dear friend of mine. In a lot of ways, I wouldn't be where I am right now without him. Like, Scott's the kind of guy where I had questions and I was just some random dude that showed up at his arcade to hang out for a little bit and started asking him questions. And he was very forthcoming and very honest with me. And he's like, if you ever need anything, give me a call. And I actually took him up on it. And I called him a couple of times and we developed a really cool friendship. I had sold a couple of games to him. And over the course of time, I was like, I'll bring him down to you. I'll come down and play anyways. And Scott was very, very critical in me getting to where I am right now. And so, like, I cannot say enough about like the kind of guy Scott is.
I haven't been to Underground Retrocade in 8 years.
Man, you should go. It's fantastic. Scott runs an amazing arcade down there.
I know. At some point, they had the Big Dog tournament, and
it just ended like today.
I know. Well, Labor Day.
Okay, yeah.
So I've been watching it, but I kind of needed to start around the time that it began to really have a shot. And also schedule a bunch of trips up there to kind of chase the leader down, which Jeff Stellman ended up taking that tournament. My focus was on. My focus has been on Galvin Ghost because I buy the yearly membership every year, and there's title belts I want to get around my waist, and I have a belt that I'm going to be defending fairly soon. Although I hope, I've wondered, what did Jeff Stellman actually get? Did he get any sort of trophy or a certificate or a plaque or prize money, or what was his prize? Or is it just bragging rights? Because that's what I was wondering. And they never said. It was like, he didn't win the tournament, but what did he get? Oh, he got a prize box? Okay.
That's awesome.
I like the prize box will work. I think that's something to shoot for. And bragging
rights.
Bragging rights, yes. But if I were to win it and there wasn't, let's say, I'd probably go out to Trophy Smack and have a belt made.
Why not?
Yes. Just have something to brag. Just hanging on my wall. Anyway, I should have. So 2014, you got inspired to open a local arcade, open to the public. So it took 3 years to find a location. And where is that location?
So we're located in Menomonee Falls. Menomonee Falls is a northwest suburb of Milwaukee. So not only do we have approximately 35 to 40,000 people here in Menomonee Falls alone, but my customer base also extends into Milwaukee, which is a customer base of approximately 750,000 people. And at the time that we opened, the arcades were very underrepresented here in Milwaukee. There's literally your choices when we opened was pretty much either Up Down, which had recently opened, and they're more of a bar arcade style business.
Yeah.
And us, and we're much more family oriented. Kids can be here from open to close, and So it really helped us that kind of we got in at the right time. We were able to plant that flag and really hold down the area ourselves and kind of do our own thing. And people have really responded to it. Our business has been fantastic. It took us about 6 months to open the business. And, I had every intention of keeping my IT position with the local power company. And after about 6 months, I had to quit my job because I needed to be here full time because the business was just going crazy.
I had to keep that little message up so George could see it.
So George can see it, yeah.
Yeah, because I think he peeked up, but I don't think he had a chance to read it. Now he's reading it. George, do you have a response to this?
There are lots of people that can beat George at MK.
I don't care.
You don't care? Okay.
Grow up. I mean,
This coming from the guy who...
I fix games. I don't need to play them.
He plays them. He takes the glass off the pinball machine so he can get the grand champion scores.
Oh, is that how it works? I just lift up the tab and...
By request.
By request.
He's got to make sure every single switch works properly.
Oh. I should ask. So, 6 months it took. Now there's another arcade in the Chicago area that's yet to open. He's still in progress of getting his space ready. What are the trials and tribulations you had to go through in that 6 months to get that place open? For anybody who may even want to open an arcade, what should they expect to get into?
Well, the first thing that you have to do is you have to understand what the city ordinances are in the area that you're in. Some city ordinances still have outdated tax laws in place to be able to get, $25, $50 per machine on location each year. And they do that to kind of help build funds and stuff. But when you work in a free play arcade style, it can be very difficult because you can't really monetize. Well, this game is or is not making enough money to be able to cover that and make money to pay for itself and X, Y, and Z. So knowing what those city ordinances are, getting into a place where you can either absorb that cost or find alternative locations where they do not have those laws in place. Otherwise, you'll have to go before the city council to try to get the city ordinance changed, which is a whole nother ordeal. We actually did have to go through going in front of the city council here in Menominee Falls because we had to get what's called a conditional use license. Basically what that does is that zones this building that we're in to be able to house our type of business. There's a cost that is usually associated with that. Then you have to go before the board. You have to talk to them and let them know kind of what your business is and how it runs and this and that. And we were really intimidated by that process. Like we walked in there and, you've got all of these, we'll say adults, sitting in front of you, staring at you. And you're like, yeah, I want to open an arcade. And then I have to explain to them what I mean by an arcade. And, they're like, oh, do you need a liquor license? And I'm like, no, we're family friendly. We don't want to serve alcohol at this point. So we don't need a liquor license. And they're like, and you're bringing all these old retro games in and yes. And here's the business model. Here's how it works. And literally I'm going through all of this and I'm freaking out because I'm standing in front of the city council. And all of a sudden I look up and two of the city council members are high-fiving because they're so excited that they're getting an arcade in the area. I was like, we're a shoe. And they're like, you guys have nothing to worry about. You don't even have to come back for the vote. Sweet. So
see, now I was about to say, you're in front of a bunch of technology-challenged old fogies who long for the days of the manual typewriter and rotary phone, but no, You were in front of people who grew up with video games, and they were.
Yeah, I mean, they were about the same age as me. They grew up with all of this stuff going on, so they definitely were super excited, and that gave us a really nice boost of confidence. So we came in here, and then it was just a matter of getting the space ready, and depending on how deep you want to get into doing that, and how much you want to do, and how. It's like, yeah, you can either spend $13 a square foot for basic carpet, or you can spend nothing and have tile floor, or you can spend $100 per square foot and do like the glow in the dark stuff. What do you want to do? And so it becomes a balance of how much money are you willing to invest into that space, especially knowing that if you ever decide to leave that location, that you can't take most of that stuff with you, and how much build out you're willing to absorb. We did stuff on a shoestring budget. We still, it's funny, we still have areas of our arcade that are sectioned off, and instead of having walls built for like our party room, we used cubicle wall and pieced it together into large walls, because we could take them down and move them around and recreate rooms if we needed to, and it became very easy to work with. And so it was a very interesting, unique solution to a weird problem that could be very difficult long term. Being able to absorb those types of expenses early on, especially not knowing if you're even going to be able to pay rent the first month. I mean, when we opened our door day one, the business had $217 in its bank account. Like, we had drained almost every single penny we had available into getting the space ready and being able to serve our customers. And then we opened the first day, and we had like 200 plus people show up. I mean, our brains were just like, I looked at my business partner, I looked at my wife, and after freaking out for 6 months, like, how were we going to pay this first month's rent? And we opened up the first day, and rent was covered. Like, it was crazy. I'm like, this business is going to work.
You had to pay me too.
You said you had to pay him too. Yes.
I pay him in spare hardware. He just gets extra nuts and bolts to take home, sell on the side, eBay.
Yeah, he steals my stuff too. You took my Space Invaders Deluxe, dude.
Space Invaders Deluxe. Well, yeah. The problem is George likes to bring all sorts of stuff from home, and then it gets mixed in with the stuff here.
And then it gets added to the arcade floor. Right?
Then it winds up going into a machine, and it goes out on the floor, and then he's like, my boards disappeared. Like, where do you think they went?
it went into your Space Invaders Deluxe. You only what'd you have, like 5 of them, and you sold all of them?
Yes.
We got the fancy.
We have the Japanese
Space Invaders, the Cabaret. That's a Taito trim line, and then you got the big blue Taito Space Invaders with the joystick. The way how I remember it from when I was
way better gameplay, way better.
Yeah.
Every Space Invaders I've ever played had the left and a right button and not a joystick. So you had a Taito Space Invaders that had a joystick.
Well, if you played it with buttons, then it was a Midway machine. All of the Taito machines came with a joystick, and they were mainly imports. So if you look at the cabinet, there's Japanese writing all over it.
I never knew that.
It is super cool. It is like one of the coolest looking cabinets from that time frame.
Way better. Well, I can't say it's way better than Midway. I like regular Midway Space Invaders, the blue one. I like those. I didn't like Deluxe.
I liked George. What was the Sega version we had?
Space Encounters?
No, Space Attack. Space Attack.
Space Attack.
Which is actually, I liked the
Kind of a
gameplay
knockoff
of Space Attack better than the gameplay for Space Invaders.
It was color, wasn't it?
Color overlay.
Yeah, I think it was gels. I think there were gel overlays for that one.
100
Somebody
years
sent
ago.
me a goofy message, and I had to look at it. Hold on. I'm going to pull this one up. Space Tac. Oh, there's no screenshot. Do they have this in here? Oh, good.
They're super rare. I had one of those too.
It was broken and we never fixed it.
And then I sold it, and the guy fixed it like immediately.
Yeah.
I seem to recall there was another Space Invaders-like game, but it was not color. It was a color overlay, but I bet it was Space Encounters Arcade. Let me see if that was what I'm... No.
So
Space Encounters is basically... Oh, the tunnel...
Yeah, it's
yeah,
totally different gameplay. That's the
the
one with the
Star
big white
Wars
shroud around
trench scene.
it. The yoke. The primitive yoke.
Yeah. I know for a fact that the Arcadia down in McLean or Atlanta, one of the two, has one of those. Has not shown up at Galpin Ghost, and I haven't seen one anywhere else that's playable. Oh, that's another thing I saw back in the day, Starfire. Yeah, it's like Star Wars. It's another play on Star Wars. The font matches up.
Yeah, that was the early 80s. That was like the wild west, man. Like there was no copyright infringement at that point. Like they just went to town and stole every idea they could.
Yeah, there's multiple clones of Space Invaders. There's one that I did play all the time. I just can't remember the exact title of it, but I would probably recognize it if I saw it. Gosh, other games back in the day. Yeah, there's hacks of games. You had the original Pac-Man, and then you started seeing the cabinet with modifications done to the gameplay. The mazes look a little different. The monster movements aren't exactly the same, which they called the Atlantic City ROMs for Pac-Man. Was the ghost behavior changed in the mazes where they'd reverse a little sooner, so you couldn't use your original patterns. Gosh, Galaxian had a ton of different mods.
Yeah.
Super Galaxian, where it's just not one Galaxian and then peeling off at a time. There's a bunch peeling off at a time, and they're going super speed left and right. And then the Gal Boss takes a bunch of escorts with it instead of two. Crazy. And there's a lot of them back there.
There was a lot of that.
I haven't seen any of those. I've never... All those hacks back in the day, I don't see them around nowadays. Nowhere nowadays.
See, and I see all that weird stuff now, which is even more unusual.
All right, so 6 months of trying to get the place open. You had over 200 people show up on the grand opening. You are a mission-based model, kind of like Galpin Ghost, is pay for an all-day pass. If somebody's hanging around for the week, they could buy an all-week pass. I assume you have a month or a year pass too.
So we didn't want to do subscription model. I'm not a fan of subscription model. What winds up happening is you forget about your subscription, or something happens where you're unavailable, or somebody loses a job and now it overdraws their account, and so we thought that did a disservice to our customers. And so what we decided to do in alternative is we offer a 10-pack. It's a prepaid 10-pack. It's $150. It's good for 10 admissions. It doesn't expire. And because you've already prepaid, even if we wind up having to increase our per day cost, it is still good for 10 admissions. And you hold on to the card, you bring it in, we punch it, we give it back to you, and you go on. But it's a really good way if you know you're going to be in multiple times to save a couple of dollars and really get a nice value out of it. The other thing that's very cool with it is we allow for those punches to be used for any admissions. And so like you could come in with 2 of your friends and we would just punch it 3 times for you if you wanted. And then everybody gets the admissions for the $15. That's what you've already paid. So they wind up getting your discounted admissions, and you can go ahead and do that over and over and over again. So it's not limited to just one person. It's great for like families of 4 to be able to come in multiple times. And, you know, the 2 times that those families of 4 come in, and, you know, it basically winds up being 8 admissions at that point at $20 a piece. It's $160. You paid $150 for the card. So you've already saved $10 and you have 2 extra admissions for you and the wife to come back and have a date night. Leave the kids with the sitters. So it winds up working really, really well for our customers, and it's been a really popular option for a lot of our regulars.
All right, so when you did open, how many games did you have on the arcade floor?
We opened with 55 arcade games and 4 pinball machines.
So 200 people showed up on day 1. I assume they all didn't show up at the same time.
No, they came and went through the day, and most of the people were only there for 2 hours or whatever to be able to just kind of play what we had. And, but literally within a month, we had added another 20 games on top, and like it was something that happened very, very fast. You know, when we first opened, we were like, $15 with what we have is kind of. It's not bad, but it's not great. And so we definitely wanted to make sure that we were able to add that value. And so we prioritized taking a lot of that money that was brought in through the admissions and reinvested into more games and tech help. Lots of tech help. George has actually been helping us since pretty much almost day one. Yeah, he
actually it was day minus
0.5. We were here
minus 2.
Yeah, we were here the night before until like 3 a.m. working on games.
No. So I came on Thursday. You were still wheeling games in on Thursday. I got here at like 2 o'clock, and I just kept going, and it's like
we were going
5 o'clock, and you had like the TV crew coming in from the
Yeah. So I left to go and get 2-3 hours worth of sleep, and then the TV crews came in early, and but it was very cool. It was a very fun time for us, you know, at that time. Like it was very.
Don't forget the new carpet smell.
Yeah, the new carpet smell.
Woo!
That stunk. That stunk for like 2 weeks.
Woo! No,
it
lasted like 2 years.
Yeah.
And then it's like new car smell once
it eventually goes away. But George,
what's your anniversary day?
July 1st.
July 1st, 2017.
Yep.
Right? Okay. So for July 1st, 2017, and now we're at September 2024. How many games are in your arcade now?
We have about 200 arcade games and 30 to 35 pinball machines, all on free play.
And how many games in the vaults?
In the back area, we probably have.
Well, I say the vault just halfway jokingly because Doc Beck talks about the vaults all the time.
No, we don't have a vault.
That vault is different.
I've been in that vault. If it's cool,
you
it's
have.
No, I haven't.
I wonder how it looks like in there, but without having to.
I don't know what you're talking about.
How packed is it?
It's not terrible. Like we still have.
George must have saw something. I know he's sworn to confidentiality, which is perfectly fine. He doesn't have to reveal what's in the vault.
I mean, he's about as watertight as a sieve.
What are you talking about?
You should see our interactions at every convention we encounter each other. It's always the gruff and the gruff heel greeting, and then you just have a few laughs afterward.
George is unusually quiet today, in part because we're trying to keep this a G-rated show. George and I, we tend to abuse each other fondly.
Well, I've already given them a couple of shots on this podcast. It was like, I think we covered quite a bit. Heck, he's probably got more stories to go through that I don't even think.
He's got a lot of good horror stories.
Yeah, that one. Well, Halloween's coming up. Now, that might be a topic. Horror stories in video gaming.
Right, yeah.
I know we had that one. Gosh, we kind of covered it in Crimes and Gaming. That nutcase that, killed somebody and killed himself.
I had a 750-pound race driving fall on top of me here. That was fun. We've got all sorts of cool horror stories like that here.
What are those? We got to fix them.
No, we don't.
Okay.
Well,
we should have a bonfire.
Oh gosh, the burning our Kiggins is not something that I'd like to. That's a horrible sight.
George, if you haul the race drivings onto the roof, I will be happy to throw them off for you.
You know,
you're gonna pull a Todd Tucky.
That's what I'm saying. He's got the TNT head on it and everything.
You ever see the stuff?
Yeah, so that, oh boy.
Yeah. That's like some serious KLOV lore right there. Between that and the Star Wars chair, and we're all old school.
RAM controls. That's like
RAM controls.
That is a trending topic again. I don't know anything about it. I never bought anything from them.
That rears its head like every 9 months. Somebody orders from that dude thinking they're going to be the exception to the rule.
The man got arrested.
Again.
Which man? Who got arrested?
RAM controls. The gentleman that
Adam Judd is one of the names.
You got to remember his names.
He's got
RAM controls. I'm not familiar with that one. I'll have to look it up. That might be a crime and gaming thing.
That is
some serious crime and gaming. There's huge history there.
Yeah, I was reading
countless KLOV threads based on RAM controls, and they were the guys that would go through and be like, "Hey, we're going to reproduce this X rare part. We're doing pre-orders. We need to get 1,000 people to get onto this," and literally then they would disappear with the money.
Yeah, there's been some of that.
There was a guy that got taken for like $9,000.
Ugh.
Yeah, trying to do large order reproduction purchases, and
yes, we got 3D printing now.
Yeah, the people that actually got stuff, they were like, "Oh, it was high quality. Like all he had to do was just do it legit." He would have made a lot of money that way, but okay.
So I definitely want to address Haas's question here.
Well, let me swerve to that topic. That is the next topic, since he brought it up. So, your thoughts on score tracking? Right now, you currently do it kind of informally. There's scorecards over on top of your machines. However, right now, I don't believe they're being sent into any sort of national scoring house. Is that correct?
That is correct. We do not currently do submissions to Twin Galaxies or to Garcade. The reason that we don't do that is typically a lot of them, especially Garcade, has requested verification of the board photographs of the dip switches, and there's additional hoops that we would have to jump through in order to certify pre-score submission, without even knowing if anybody was really interested in doing score submissions to Garcade at any point for that particular machine. And so typically what we have done in the past is when we've had a couple of people out. Phil Fenton's been out to try and do some track and field records here. And so what we wind up doing is a lot of times he'll let us know that he's coming in. We will set the machine into an area where they're not necessarily having to be on the arcade floor. We take pictures of the boards and everything right at the time that they are going to go ahead and do that. We include pictures of the boards in the video as they're getting started with the attempted world record that they're going after, and we address it on a case-by-case basis. So if somebody wanted to set a high score here, we would definitely be as accommodating as possible. But it's not something that we strive to do on a day-to-day basis en masse, just because of the sheer amount of work that would be required for us to be able to do that for 200 games.
I do know for a fact that a few months ago, a game, and he probably wishes he did record it, Jim Patzer would have had the world record for Blazing Star. I know there was the Arcade Wars Game of the Month. He set a score
and Puzzle
higher.
Bobble. He set an absolute insane score on Puzzle Bobble. He does have that on record, and that has been submitted to Garcade, I believe, but it was up to him to go ahead and do that because he wanted to do it on his own, and we were perfectly okay with that.
Well, it would have been the Twin Galaxies, not necessarily
Twin Galaxies.
Yeah,
it's where, exactly. This is, again, I'm more of an operator than a player.
Right.
And so from my standpoint, it's more revolving around the business and maintaining the games and making sure that they're running properly, because 99.9% of our business are what we fondly call squares. They don't care. I could set it to 7 guys and as many continues as they want, and they would be pickled pink. So we don't necessarily strive for those records. We're having plenty of fun spanking everybody in Arcade Wars.
Yeah, well, I mentioned it earlier. Yeah, Jim Patzer put in 100,000 on Ninja Gaiden. You just need 2 more players.
We're working on it. We've got we have a couple of players here that are absolutely phenomenal. Jim Patzer's definitely ahead above everybody else. I don't think anybody here is going to deny that. But we have guys, Brooke Anderson, Jason, JDD. These guys put up some pretty cool scores on a fairly regular basis. And then we've got Anton, and we've got Nate, and they're employees that literally just participate just for the fun of participating and learning the games and trying something new. And so we've got a kind of good core group of guys that are really interested in making sure that we're putting up high quality scores. And considering we took 2nd place last year, we only participated for half the year. We didn't even get involved until about June, and took a 2nd place. And this year, we fully intend to establish dominance.
Well, right now, looks like I need to. I'm going to pull it up on the screen.
Pull it up on the screen, baby. Show the world. We love it.
Gotta pull there. There we go.
29 points.
Yeah, you got a big lead right now. Big lead.
29 points. Yeah, we can pretty much not even show up this month and still retain the lead. Jim has been a cornerstone. Please do not he is a phenomenal player. To watch him play and to see how he progresses in learning a game is mind-boggling. He picks it up so fast. He does, just a little bit of research just to get some good tricks going, and then he just starts pounding away. So he's a phenomenal player.
And I wish I was. Galvin Ghost had to sit out a couple of months. He had to sit out Puzzle Bobble because the monitor was not working. Then another game. Oh gosh, let me go down here. This game. Do you have a board for Wonder Boy 3?
No. We wound up using the Pandora's box. And we do that. That's part of the reason that we really enjoy participating in Arcade Wars, in part because since they're based in Australia, their access to a lot of these games is severely limited. They did not see the same types of releases that we saw here stateside. And so in order to be able to make it so that they could participate in something that would be available to anybody anywhere, one of the things that they did was they allowed for emulators and things like Pandora's box to be used to be able to continue to play these. The downside is, and we learned this last month, the Pandora's box is definitely, yes, scores fueled by Soda Brides. Don't hate the players. Don't hit the player, hate the game. No, I'm just kidding.
Well, maybe that's what Doc Mack should be doing is
why wouldn't
bribing
you?
people with sodas.
Why wouldn't you? It's a brilliant marketing ploy. Come set a score, I'll give you a soda, man.
I'll the next time I'm up there, I'm going to suggest that. But I do.
Don't tell them how we do it.
Well, you just revealed
we're enjoying
it.
Spanking
Or this
everybody.
guy said it. So this guy gave it away. Do you know who this guy is? Do you know
Not
him?
offhand. He's definitely a regular. So.
So he gave away your secret.
Beef with me.
What?
He's got beef with me.
Mystery Man.
But no, that's why we enjoy really participating in this particular thing, is because they do allow for that. So if you don't have the game on your floor, you do have unavailability to at least participate. Last month got into a little bit of a weird thing with Jungle King because the Pandora's box had different settings than what would be available for Twin Galaxies. And so we wound up participating using the dip switch settings put forth by Twin Galaxies and Arcade. And all of a sudden we realized that the majority of the other arcades, including Galloping Ghost, any of the scores should have been ending in either 50 or 00, just due to the scoring and the elimination of the time bonus. And because everybody had already submitted scores for the month and it was like 6 days left in the month, we wound up saying, well, forget it. If everybody else is given the time bonus, we're giving the time bonus. And so we reset our regular boards to the same settings that the Pandora's box had. And then Jim threw down a huge spanking. So like,
Oh, it was Brooke.
Oh no, you're right.
Yeah,
Absolutely, it was Brooke.
Like
Brooke threw down. See, like I said, it's not just Jim. We have a really good group of gamers that are very competitive. They're competitive with each other, but they are super friendly with each other. And so it's really neat because it's not just can I beat X, can I beat Y. They literally go back and forth on scores. We saw this pre-Arcade Wars with Jim Patzer and Jason JDD. They wound up doing. He doesn't have a mustache. but that would be good. No, they went back and forth playing and setting the house high on Mario Brothers. And it literally got to a point where they were coming in every single week just to be able to put up a couple thousand more than what the other one had put up a couple of days ago. And they got really competitive for a while. And then all of a sudden it became, they both showed up on the same day and they both wanted to play. And they were like, well, instead of us competing, like, you know, what would you do differently? What would you do differently? And they like struck this friendship, and it's been so cool to watch. So now, like, we do the Arcade Wars, and it's like, hey, this is the game. We've got a couple of days left in the month, and like they're calling each other. Like, hey, have you gotten out there? We need you to get up another score. And it's very cool. Like, they're very good with motivating each other to continue to allow us to be competitive in Arcade Wars. And we've really ran with it. We love doing it.
So here's a question for you. Do you think Jim Petzer should have gotten Gamer of the Year from Galloping Ghost?
I do not know, nor do I pretend to understand the politics behind Gamer of the Year for Galloping Ghost. I think that if nothing else, Jim should be in at least consideration.
Yeah.
If for no other reason that he has proved through Arcade Wars that he is more than capable of spanking half the guys at Ghost.
But the problem is he did it on behalf of Garcade and not Galloping Ghost, which I think.
Well, I guess they should have recognized
Sour grapes,
him earlier.
I guess. Sour grapes, I guess.
Actually, it's funny because, well, Jim lives up here, so it's easier for Jim to get here than it is to get down to the Ghost.
Right.
Like, it's not like he doesn't want to be at the Ghost. This is very convenient for him. He still goes down to the Ghost on a fairly regular basis.
Yeah.
You know, you were showing the Ghost standings, and he was just a hair above you. So,
well, I can only go every couple weeks or so. I'm not sure when I'm going next. I managed to get up there
Jim spends a considerable amount of time here. He is usually in 2-3 times a month. So, you know, he is a regular at our place. He's just, man, he is an incredible, incredible player.
For me to go to the Ghost, I have to travel 200 miles. It's a 200-mile commute.
Yeah, it's about the same for him.
Now, if I had to commute from here to Milwaukee, it's about 5.5 to 6 hours, depending on how many times I stop.
But George is here.
I know.
You should be coming up just to see George.
Well, I only make one trip.
I'm never here.
I only make one trip. I gotta take him off mute. There we go.
Why you keep muting me, dude?
Because of well,
slalom. I got slalom to work. That's.
I heard some sort of sound effect that wasn't coming from you, so I had to mute it for a second because I wasn't sure what it was.
Mute him.
Well, I thought maybe your phone was going off.
He has nothing new to say.
Nothing new to say.
Jabroni.
Jabroni.
Yeah, he's a jabroni.
So you have a versus Slaughter? Is that what you have?
I just programmed it. I have had a very difficult time programming these ROMs, and just happened to find something that.
We have lots of Nintendo VS stuff. We like the Nintendo VS platform.
You got Hogan's Alley.
But you need the light guns for that.
Yeah.
Slaughter, you need the skis.
We need an NES Zapper.
Which is a solid replacement.
You need to get up on eBay and buy a Zapper. We need to steal the eye out of it.
Or 3D print it.
No, the actual.
That wouldn't last in my place.
The sensor quit.
But I know Slaughter had its own set of skis attached to the cabinet.
Yes.
That's rare.
He's running it on the Red Tent right now.
Yeah. For Galvin Ghost, they only have like 2 versus games, Super Mario, and then versus Castlevania, and that's it. They don't have any of the other versus games, and which is kind of surprising.
Yeah, we've got Excite Bike, Mario. We've got
Dr. Mario.
Dr. Mario. And then we run. We've got the Red Tent. We've got the PC 10 going.
They used to have had versus game and cocktail cabinets, but they got rid of all their cocktails once in favor of the stand-ups. Of course, the more stand-ups they got, the less room they had for the cocktails, because you have to they basically sit down, and then you had to have a player on each side, or at least a spot for them to sit on each side, and
they take up an obscene amount of space.
Yeah, a little bit more than a regular cabinet.
It was a lot larger than I thought it would be.
But it's great to take to shows like MGC.
Right.
It's something you
Which
don't
is
see
where I was going. I only make one trip up to Milwaukee a year, and of course, the Midwest Gaming Classic. Which, good grief. Oh. I don't know if that's ever going to happen.
It's a shame because it's a fantastic game. Chloe, come up here to Milwaukee. Come play it up here.
That could happen. Although, I don't... It depends
Dr.
on...
Mario.
Oh, yes.
I don't know where KG's going to go. Went all the way back to California. Of course, winter is coming, and the youngster prefers the warm climates, and of course, dead of winter in Chicago is not
talking about
fun.
It was 80 degrees today.
I know it's 80 degrees, but
it's horrible. I'm a Wisconsin
well, we're
guy.
in September, but
hot.
It's not going to last for too much longer. I mean, I'm running air conditioning today, but next week it's going to drop to the 70s, which I'm glad because, I kind of like the cooler weather. Not to save money on the AC. That'd be nice.
Try cooling a building with 200 arcade games running 8 hours a day.
Well, try cooling an arcade with 1,000 arcade games in there, which has been GGA's biggest problem throughout their history. So they had to add AC units. The shoot 'em up room. Oh gosh, I'm about to be joined by this goofball.
George,
he finally woke up and decided to crash the stream. I knew it was going to happen sooner or later. It's just a question of when.
George, do you remember the Shang Tsung fight night at Galloping Ghost where it was like 100 degrees inside the place?
This the shmup room.
Dude, it was horrible. It was just brutal. It was 90 degrees outside. Like, let me preface it saying that, when you take that many games in that small of a space at that time, because they were only 600 games or so at that time.
Games now. It's
Just before he did any of the big expansions, he had just opened up like one expansion room. It's 2014, so it was years ago. But man,
that's when I started.
It was hot. It was terrible.
Yeah, that room didn't have much airflow. They finally put an AC unit in there. Finally. It's somewhat cooler. We'll see how this cat's licking my feet. Ugh. Idiot. Well, now they expanded, to the east, and now Canton's open. So
it's been a little while since I've been down there. I need to make a trip back down and see all the changes one of these days.
You're not going.
Oh, sure he is. You get him down there. You should have went down for. Let's say you should go down there for game 1000.
For game 1000.
Yes. What'd you think of the game 1000? Road Blaster.
I was gonna say we got to be pretty close. Or did he eclipse it yet?
That was it. Road Blaster was
That
unveiled
was it.
on August the 12th. Basically, wanted to do it during anniversary week when all the gamers are around, and Billy Mitchell came out for this.
That's awesome. Congrats to Docs on that. Like 1,000 is a big achievement.
We were wondering if what game 1000 was going to be, because it's like it showed up about 2 hours late. If it's a Laserdisc game.
Yeah.
And Laserdisc games are hard to keep up and running, especially 40 years after release. And it's like, oh, it's after 5, now it's 5:30. It's like, what's going on? Then I went outside, and it's like, I see Doc Mac running up the street. I was like, oh no, something's up. And so he ran back down the street to because they were trying to get this game running. Something must have went wrong. So hung around outside while we're waiting for the game, having chats with fellow gamers, and finally see the game coming up the street. As I'm kind of said, maybe the game should have been this one or this one, because it was looking like they were not going to pull a game out of T20 as Game 1000, even though the game I thought ought to have been Game 1000 was in T20. They chose not to bring that one out. They did acquire Sky Skipper, and you know how many of those are around.
Yeah.
You can count them on, I don't know, maybe one hand. There's people, well, there's only a dozen. Yeah, there's only a dozen. But in a physical cabinet, there's one at Nintendo of America. The guy who built a Sky Skipper, converting the original board back from a Popeye that was converted over to Popeye. So there's a couple of boards, but he took this thing around to various gaming conventions, and somehow Galvin Ghost got their hands on it. Since the game has not been unveiled yet, don't know the story on that, how he acquired it, but we do have an idea of where it came from. But going back to Midwest Gaming Classic, because that's the only time I get up there, because I've gone there for 20 years straight.
That's pretty impressive.
Yeah, 2004, I believe, was the first one that I went, and been up for every one ever since, including the year where there were like 2 of them 6 months apart.
Yeah, there was the Midwest Gaming Classic Days and Nights, because the original 2020 had gotten canceled.
Yeah.
Then they did like I said, the Days and Nights in November, I believe.
Yeah.
We participated in that one, and then back to the regular scheduled program in 2021.
And both conventions were quite different. It was very fresh.
Well, it was two very different venues. I mean, they did the Days and Nights at the original Sheridan.
That year, no, they were in the Wisconsin Center.
Yeah, they had moved over
before COVID.
Yes,
before the pandemic.
2019, I believe.
18 and 19.
Yeah, so they had moved during that time frame, but they did the that weird November time frame rather than doing it at the MGC. Oh no, they did.
No, I'm November
sorry. I'm sorry. No, they did November at
the.
I'm wrong. They did the November thing at the Wisconsin Center. The Days and Nights actually took place in at the Sheridan in the beginning of July. It was around 4th of July weekend of 2020.
The Days and
So
Nights,
it
I
was a
wasn't a
very
part of
weird
that.
thing, but yeah, it only lasted the 1 year. But it was cool because it was kind of like being able to go back to the Sheridan for a really short period of time to kind of relive the way things were prior to them moving to the Wisconsin Center, whatever it's called this week, the Baird Center.
Yeah, that's correct. Gosh, the Sheridan was so crowded.
The thing is, we've talked about this. One of the things that we really miss about the event at the Sheridan was what we fondly called the scavenger hunt. Like, you would walk around the hotel and like somebody would walk out of a hotel room and be like, dude, you need to see this, and drag you into their hotel room and hand you a beer and like, try this game. And you're like, weirdest abduction ever. But it was like a blast. And so you would go into all these weird rooms and see all these cool things. And I bought originally when Spooky Pinball first started out, their second game, I want to say Rob Zombie. Before it was Rob Zombie, it was
America's Most Haunted.
No, that was their first one. The second one that they were coming out with was Pinball Zombies from Beyond the Grave.
Alice Cooper?
And that was turned into Alice Cooper, yeah.
And that's somewhere around the way.
But I wound up buying one of their Pinball Zombies from Beyond the Grave, one of their translites, out of a hotel room at the Sheridan where they were like hawking them on the side, and they had their America's Most Haunted there, and it was still like pre-production at that point. And then, like I said, Pinball Zombies turned into Alice Cooper. And so it had this like weird, this is no longer available. And like literally we still have the translite hanging up here at the arcade.
Then it came out with something called Domino's Pizza Adventure.
Oh, that was terrible. That was terrible.
They know it was terrible.
There's a big part of me that really wanted to like Spooky.
Yeah, but you know
we have
what?
A total nuclear annihilation, and it's a total nuclear disaster.
Not anymore.
From an engineering standpoint.
The big thing about Domino's Pizza Adventure was the return of the Noid.
Yes.
After that bizarre incident where somebody went berserk because somehow the character matched his last name, and then he thought he was being mocked for it or something.
So one of my buddies, Andy, he owned a Domino's Pizza here, and he wound up having his arcade collection in the back of his Domino's. And so literally we would go to hang out with him, and we'd go walking through the Domino's and walking through the kitchen into the back area, and that's where he had his arcade games where we would go and hang out. And he even bought the Domino's Pizza and was like so excited because it was Domino's and it was Return of the Noid, and he got it, and like within 2 months it was gone. Like he was
like he runs a Domino's and has a Domino's Pizza pinball,
and he gets rid of the Domino's Pizza pinball because it was so bad. That's like the Pabst Can Crusher, like not a great game. Like,
well, Pabst Can Crusher was just kind of like a reskinned Whoa Nelly, Big Juicy Melons, which is a throwback to EM pinballs. It's just for
we really liked the Whoa Nelly. We thought it was very cool.
Yeah,
we weren't in a position to add that into our offering at the time it was released.
Although they used the same daggum table layout for a third pinball, I guess based on some band. I don't remember offhand what it was, but it's the exact same table, just different artwork.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I have a question in the chat.
Cheese curds to our concessions. We actually, so big announcement, within the next like month or so, we will have nachos and cheese and warm pretzels and cheese available in our concession area, in addition to the sodas and the chips and the candy. And
I
so
won't
we
have to use
will
Dairy
be,
Queen anymore.
yeah, we will be expanding some of our food offerings so that there's a little more to go off of than just chips and candy
And soda.
and soda.
Yeah, because every time I go to Galvin Ghost, I have to eat out my bring food in a cooler, so I don't have to go anywhere, or basically drive to a fast food place to chow down before running back. Because good grief, after a first few hours, I'm like feeling weak. All of a sudden, it's like, ugh, I gotta eat something now. And it's like I'm not ready to go have lunch or dinner because I've already like I ate something on the way. It's like, why am I needing a recharge already? Somebody asked, yeah, cheddar stuffed brats. Oh, basically brats with cheddar cheese injected in them. Is that what I'm getting
Yeah,
here?
they make the sausage and have pieces of cheddar cheese in them, and they're fantastic. We're Wisconsin. We love brats.
So, Galvin Ghost used to be a exhibitor at Midwest Gaming Classic, I believe Star Worlds, and Underground Retrocade also had turns at it.
Mm-hmm.
Nowadays, you are the primary arcade to come out to Midwest Gaming. How did you land it?
Well, I mean, we'd been attending. I've been attending personally since 2013. I brought games as a basement collector for years before opening my own arcade. I would volunteer to help fix machines prior to the show so that all the machines would be ready for the various pinball tournaments and stuff. And then once I decided I wanted to open my own arcade, Dan Lucen and Gabby were really nice and allowed us to come in and market our arcade 3 months or so before we opened. So that was one of the ways that we were able to get the word out ahead of time. And then we continued bringing games and expanding the number of games that we brought pretty much every single year since. And once we got to a point where they had moved to the Wisconsin Center, and Star Worlds had pulled out and Galloping Ghost had pulled out, we decided we wanted to do one of the rooms in the community area and kind of do it our own way. And so that's what we've done now for the past 6-7 years. And it's been phenomenal. It's a great marketing tool for us. It's a way to show community and participate in that community. And it's our hometown show. That's honestly one of the reasons that a lot of the Chicago-based arcades kind of pulled out, was because while they would bring games and doing a show like that is a lot of work. It's a lot of work, and it's even worse when you have a 2.5-hour commute to take those games back and forth over the course of a weekend. Scott, it was especially hard for him because he's, for the most part, a one-man show down there. And so he would bring games up and drop them off, and he'd have signage up, and then he would go and open and run his arcade. And then he'd come back on Sunday and pick everything up and take it all back. And, he was like, I don't get a whole lot of benefit from the advertising here at this particular location. And so from a business standpoint, I think, he came to the same conclusion that Dan came to, or that Doc came to with Galloping Ghost, and, even Pat and Glenn down at Star Worlds. They were all like, we don't get anything out of it. It's too far away. And so, I think for them, it was a smart business decision to pull out of doing that, because for the amount of time and effort required, they weren't getting any real benefit out of it. And it's better for them to focus more on their own local shows, because they will see that direct marketing money going back into admissions coming in through their doors.
And you had, for past conventions, you had to pull some games off the floor to take together, or did you have enough extras that were not on the floor?
It's a little bit of both. We
bit
do
of both.
we keep some games that are working that we just don't have room for out on our floor in our back storage area.
The vault.
Yeah, the vault. We have a party room, and our party room typically has 10 to 15 arcade games in it. During that time period of Midwest Gaming Classic, we block parties in that room because there won't be any games in there. We take those games to MGC, and then we do take a couple of games off of our floor. That's the plus side to having 200 games. If I take 5-7 games off the floor, you really don't notice.
Right.
And we will occasionally backfill with other stuff we have working in the vault area, and so it just becomes this big like moving stuff around and shifting, and but that's what we do. Last year we brought 38 games to the Midwest Gaming Classic.
And I wish I had more time to play them, but
it's a big show. Like, it's hard to get through everything there.
Last year I had, despite going for 20 years straight, when Midwest Gaming Classic was over, I was just, it had the blues. I was just like, it's over. It's like the fastest 48 hours of the year. Get there Friday afternoon, and it's like, it's all a blur, and plus they shut it down like, I don't know, a certain hour before the after party. There's like an hour break, and then the after parties launch.
Yeah, they pretty much shut everything down at 8 o'clock on Saturday.
Yeah. It's like I didn't get around. It's like I didn't get to do enough, I guess.
It's like that every year. I mean, the thing is while we've seen a decrease in the number of arcade games and pinball machines at that show, we continue to see an increase in the number of console offerings available for people. And so it's become a much broader show than it used to be. It used to be very arcade and pinball focused. You're seeing that arcade museum really kind of become more of the showpiece, and this is kind of the base of the show. And that comes with mixed reviews. There are a lot of people that really liked the just the massive amount of coin op that was available back when we were able to do it at the Sheraton. But moving to the Baird Center, having it in downtown Milwaukee, in a very kind of an area that's difficult to find parking to begin with, much less for a trailer, for a truck. You're seeing a lot less of, previously the majority of the show was driven by home collectors that would bring 2 or 3 machines to the show to be able to showcase. And unfortunately, a lot of those, they're not bringing them anymore just due to the hassle of, getting up on the dock and getting off the dock and trying to find parking. And, it becomes more difficult than it was. Like, literally, we would show up at the Sheraton, and it was the Wild West. It was park anywhere, dump your stuff, find a parking spot, get out of the way. When it's not like that at the Baird Center. Things are kind of metered, and they only allow so much through because it's a very difficult area to get through safely, and so it becomes much more difficult, logistically speaking, for the individual collectors to bring games to the show. And luckily the show hasn't suffered necessarily. They have pivoted properly, and they have changed a couple of the small things about the business, bringing in more of the wrestlers and the wrestling and some of the musical acts and things like that.
I'm trying to get away from the wrestling stuff, and then they brought the wrestling stuff to the convention.
Yeah, well, I mean, we're seeing a lot of crossover in interests. People that tend to be arcade and pinball and consoles and RPG gaming and LARPing, and you get all these various flavors, and it's, Midwest Gaming Classic has always been a celebration of all things gaming. And the thing is the vast majority of the people that are interested in A are also interested in B, and so we'll bring some of the wrestlers in, and we'll bring some of the movie stars in, like they brought Ernie Hudson out in, which was phenomenal, from Ghostbusters, and so they do bring a little
Ernie
bit of this
Hudson's
and a little
been
bit of
there?
this. Oh
I
yeah.
don't remember that at all.
Oh, my wife was just like on cloud 9 for an entire weekend.
What year was that?
Best MGC
19.
ever.
19.
Was that 19?
19?
Yeah.
How the heck did I miss that?
Yeah, he came
I remember
out.
Elvira being there, but not. Maybe I could. No, that was.
I didn't see
Chicago.
anybody that year.
No, that was Pinball Expo. I got that wrong. Because she was there for the unveiling of her new pinball machine. Doggone, it was so dang noisy you couldn't say. It's like barely hear. I just basically went to say hello, and that's about it. I'm not an autograph collector by any means. Tower was there last year. I know that. Well, actually, correction, this year, because we're still in 2024.
Mm-hmm.
It's actually cool. I just like by chance I had after the convention was shut down. Saturday night, just basically get your dinner somewhere. Well, the Miller brew house downstairs at basically the burger pub or whatever it's called. Got
Yeah,
a
they've
burger
got
at
that
the
like
pub.
Miller Cafe there. They've
Yeah, sat at the bar, and Tower was right next to me, just by chance.
We
I
tend to
didn't
eat
even know he was there.
we tend to eat at Doc's Smokehouse a lot.
Ah,
We
okay.
go for the barbecue across the street, or we go to Capitol Grill, grab some steaks. It's like our one shining point over the weekend where we get to enjoy ourselves just a little bit and have a nice steak dinner, and then we go back to work, because it's, for an event like that, it's legitimately 3 solid, days, 72 hours, pretty much almost on end.
What?
There are times we
That's
leave the
another
show.
thing. Because didn't feel like I got my fill. There's I could come into town a day sooner and just sign up for ChifferCon.
CypherCon.
CypherCon, yes.
CypherCon.
Which runs the few days before Midwest Gaming.
Mhm.
And this year, Guys Games and Beer set up for that convention too. So they were there for longer than, I think they were there for 4 or 5 days.
Yeah, we did that 2 years ago. We were at CypherCon for the days preceding MGC.
I mean, because I'm a computer tech guy, although I'm not a hacker, and I don't do programming.
Most of the guys that are at CypherCon are IT security guys. I know, because I know half of them. I used to work in IT, so in the Milwaukee area, so I knew tons of people.
So it's all IT security. It's like,
no, it's not all IT security. I mean, you have casual hackers, and you have ethical hackers, and you have people that are just interested in ciphers and codes, and so it's a broad conference, but it's based in that IT security realm.
Well, it looks like we had a breach in security, and
That's right.
Just now.
It's an invasion of my personal space.
Invasion of your personal space. Let's just put you full.
That's a whole lot of George.
Yeah, he looks angry.
He always looks angry.
How are you still awake?
Man, sheer willpower.
Sheer willpower.
Dude, I'm an in bed by 10 o'clock kind of guy. Don't kid yourself.
Yeah, well, I'm kind of a night owl. So I go to bed at, midnight and get up at 7:30 in the morning. Oh.
I'm in bed about 10 o'clock, and I wake up before 6 a.m. each morning.
Let me shout out some people that are in the chat. Haas Wilder, welcome. Jet Cogs has been watching. Chloe Gwynn has been watching. The Zelda Dungeon has been watching throughout. Thank you for joining the program for tonight. Well, let me get to this.
Thanks for joining, Haas. We appreciate it.
Actually, we covered the gamers that... we talked about some of the top gamers at Garcade because we talked about Arcade Wars. So I guess we already covered it. Good grief. Is there anything else that I didn't even think of that you wanted to bring up? Like future plans for Garcade. Oh, this is why I should have brought up. Because you got the arcade, but what are some of the unique games that you have that the other places don't, including Galloping Ghost, for that matter? Because I know you have a few.
We did at one point. I don't think we have anything truly unique. We have, some very cool things here. We have Cosmotrons, and the cabinet we have is serial number 0001. So we have the first production Cosmotrons cabinet, which was developed by Shane Gutbrod and Dave Furr, and they're close friends of mine. I've known them both for years now. We have a prototype Total Carnage here. That one I stole from some random dude, just some jerk off.
Is he wearing a green shirt?
He is. I told him I wasn't taking anything else unless that was included in the deal, and he was kind of bent over a barrel. So, and he's happy it's here. There's some truth to that.
Mr. Dew's Wild Ride, and that was a game that's been often requested at Galloping Ghost.
Yep, that one we put together here, and that's been a pretty cool addition. We do have, one thing that we do a little differently. We do have some rhythm games here. So we have like Jubeat, and we have Pump It Up and DDR, and Guitar Hero. George loved listening to that music all day long. It's his favorite. Make work.
And of course, you have pinballs that.
There's like 100 songs in the game, and they play the same 5. They genuinely don't know how to choose songs.
Slow.
Bad
ride.
Apple. They play Bad Apple.
Bad Apple is awesome.
No, it's pretty much nonstop slow ride. It's nonstop.
And then whatever Rush in the pinball machine. Pac-Man Battle Royale Championship.
Yes, we just added that a couple of months ago. It's fantastic. We absolutely
probably one of the first ones around to put that on the arcade floor. That's different from Battle Royale. Is you actually are basically chasing down. You're basically chasing points as opposed to trying to eliminate the other players.
And it's cool. I mean, we also offer some newer stuff. We have some indie games here, like Cosmotrons, like Switch and Shoot from DSM Arcade. We've got Deathball. Tony's fantastic. He does a great job with Deathball. I enjoy that game. So we have, some of the newer stuff. We've got some rhythm stuff. We've got some classic retro stuff. So we have a really cool mix of old and new, and we try and keep it reasonably fresh here. George is going to be the one testing all the DDR pads after the show.
It's Elder Will.
He does slow by tripping and falling onto them.
Well, he does use an aid to walk. I know that much. I don't know how he can. I don't know if he can. I don't know how well he does on a DDR. Somebody asked future tournaments.
We, the thing is we did tournaments for a little while, And all of our tournaments wound up kind of going to the wayside due to lack of participation from the community. Like I said, with a large chunk of our clientele that comes in being squares, they really
Casuals.
Patzer wins again. That would be normal. Casuals.
Casual. Be nice.
Okay, casuals. So we have them coming in, and they're not interested in the tournaments. They just want to be able to play games. And what we came to find is when we have tournaments, because 90% of the people that come here aren't interested in participating in the tournament, they actually get frustrated because some of the games aren't available for them to be able to play because they're being utilized in the tournament. And so,
I'm wanting to play more arcade tournaments. It's just there isn't that many. Everybody wants to play a fighting game tournament or a pinball tournament or Mario Kart. That's it.
And to some degree, that's why we do the the soda reward for putting up a high score for Arcade Wars. It's kind of like a mini tournament each month. Like, hey, who can get the top score on this? And all you got to do is get in the top 3, and you get a free soda out of it at least, and bragging rights, and you get to see it's all kept track on Arcade Wars site. They go back a year and a half or so now. So they've really those are the types of tournaments that are easier to do. That was why we felt really it was important to participate in the Stern Insider Connected stuff and have a lot of free play Stern Insider Connected machines, was because we could put up leaderboards, and those leaderboards people could, fight for position on and give them reason to continue coming back, and not be like, okay, well, the tournament's between these times on this date, and if you can't make it, sorry, you missed the tournament. We can run more extended period things, and that's typically what we decide to do.
All right. You have a website, correct?
We do, thegarcade.com.
All right. And admission to the arcade is
$20 all day, come and go.
And you're open how many days a
Tuesday
week?
through Sunday. We are closed on Mondays.
Taking a break.
We are typically open Tuesday through Thursday from 3 until 11. Fridays and Saturdays, 11 a.m. to 11 p.m. And Sundays from 11 a.m. to 8 p.m. And then closed every Monday.
3 to 10.
3 to 10. No, not 3
Tuesday,
to
Wednesday, Thursday.
Oh, you're right. Nope, we changed that at one point. It is 3 to 10.
All right.
I'm not here at that time. I'm in bed. We have Tim for that.
Yeah. Y'all got Jimbo Slice. We got Timbo Slice.
He's way cooler.
Way cooler.
Way cooler.
All right. Gar, I want to thank you for joining us tonight here on the Crimeycade. And George.
Absolutely. Thanks for inviting me out.
Thank you for coming back in, George. For fighting the moral support and a few snide remarks that are funny and hilarious. That's it.
That's
wow.
it.
Boy, it's got that pro wrestler look about it. I think he's ready to go body slam.
I'll cut a promo on you.
We may need you coming up to the Bloody Wars tournament and then cut some promos. That'd be interesting.
Jabroni.
Jeez. Okay, well. All right.
Well, thanks for having me on. We appreciate it.
All right. Thank you very much. And,
thanks for having me on again.
All right.
We'll do it next week.
Yeah. Oh.
You should bring Gar back.
Well, you
don't need any. Yeah, you don't need any other guests. You just need us.
Well, you suggested it, so.
Oh snap!
I thought it was a great idea, and I think it was a good idea. So, all right, Gar and George, have a good night, and hope to see you around the arcade soon.
Rock on.
Well, the other way around, but maybe me at the arcade soon. We'll see.
You know where we are.
Doggone, it's a long commute.
It's
Ah,
a day trip.
yeah, it's a day trip, all right. And a weekend stay. We'll see. All right, have a good night.
Thanks.
All right, I need, as a favor to JP, there was one other thing I needed to bring up. For I raid a channel, and there's I am going to raid a channel. Yep, if you haven't joined my Facebook page, please do so. The Crimeycade podcast is a new Facebook page at Crimeycade on Facebook.com. And then the Rock River Valley video game convention's coming up fairly soon. But JP wanted me to give my opinion about this. Blade Wars Tournament, who do I think is going to be the MVP? It's pretty much down to Aiden Cordova or Norbert Vale. Norbert Vale has won the title for the third time, so it's pretty much a coin flip between those two. The other holders of the title, I don't think, have a chance of, because they won the belt and then lost the belt the first time they had to defend it. But and then they're going to have the award ceremony come October 15th, Pinball Expo, of course, from the 15th to the 19th, and I'm going to defend my Pinball Expo title, hopefully. And then the day after, or coming to November 16th, is the Street Fighter 6 tournament, 12 p.m. at Joe's Saloon in Brookfield. As for who's going to be on the show next week, don't know yet. Don't know! I gotta line up somebody soon. Anyway, I'm gonna raid the channel, and I'm gonna go give my viewers over to Mega Retro Man, the high score for my tournament cartridge. So, until next time, I am the Mad Conservative Cryfire. Thank you for joining me on the Crimeycade podcast. I'll see you fairly soon. Good grief, I need to use the restroom pretty badly. Yes. Join me live next week. We'll be back with another fabulous guest here in the Crimeycade. And have a good night, everybody.